Yesterday I stumbled over one of the bit older videos of Stefan Molyneux, and as it is normal for him, you can summarize 3/4 of an hour of his talks into 2 sentences, which would be dose. And please keep in mind, I don't fully agree.
So this is what I'm talking about, Jason. You guys spend a lot of time talking back and forth, but you don't really know much about each other. You're skimming along the surface. You're making jokes, maybe you're flirting a bit, maybe you're not, talking about movies, but you're not talking about who you are, what shaped you, the trials and challenges and glories and opportunities of everything you experienced. You guys aren't learning about each other. You're not really there in a very sort of real, open and vulnerable way with each other. And I'm trying to move the needle of what you call love. I'm trying to move the needle of the whole damn world of what it calls love.
First of all, 80% of this video is not about polyamory, but a sad person that called Stefan with a sad past and a sad social life. It's a good portrayal of a millennial, but it has not a lot to do with polyamory. You see, he is right in one point: a relationship starts on the surface and might go into depth, which is not something that a lot of people desire. You see, a classic example is when 2 people met the first time, and this is something in the likes of, "Oh, you love music? Wow, music is my life too." And then they find out that one is talking about grindcore and the other about Beethoven. The feeling of sharing a lot is always stronger if you don't go into detail, into depth. This is where differences become obvious. If you're into these butterflies in your guts feelings, stay on the surface. Well, but jump over to polyamory. Like most other critical voices, the talk was mostly about sex, about attraction and all this kind of stuff, and that was the point where I had the feeling that I want to say something to the whole thing, because it's not all about sex. First, there is no definition how you have to behave to count as polyamorous. Sure, there are those 68ers who say that you are not polyamorous if you don't fuck the same amount of males, females, black, whites, whatever. But in essence, there is no rule, and you can ignore them, and by the way, you should always ignore them. Based on the word that is silly because it combines Greek and Latin in one word, which is stupid, it means still many loves, not many sexual partners, although it gets interpreted in that way quite frequently because there is this notion that sex and love is linked, kind of always. However, polyamory, the idea, seems to be attractive to 2 kinds of people. There are those who are not very competent in having relationships and those who are very competent in having relationship, which correlates quite often, but not always, with the amount of self-esteem, since the faction on the lower end is, first of all, way bigger, and secondly, way louder. It's those guys who shape the picture, especially in the media. From their point of view, polyamory is a lifestyle that allows them to screw around, be modern, be rebellious, and also special. And the media loves this kind of freaks because they sell. The thing is, they don't stay there. It's those people who do that for 1 year, for 2 years, perhaps for 4 years max, and then becoming monogamous and call it a phase, evolving into, let's say, average able people to practice serial monogamy, which means that they are officially faithful to each other, de facto not so much, and change partner if something went wrong in the relationship. But essentially, for those guys, it's indeed sex that is key. It's about having a lot of sex partners to brag around, to push the low self-esteem, and it's also about avoiding going into depth, because that would endanger their displaced strategies that led to the low self-esteem in the first place. And as we know, this type of people love to cultivate their problems. And there is the other spectrum, and let's say most of the highly competent people also don't care about polyamory because they have more likely not the time to think about it, because that's the crowd that is also quite competent in other tasks, especially social tasks such as parenting. But some of them do care for this idea, and the reason for that is that they think that feelings are strange things and that a lot of myths that are around of having a healthy relationship are just myths and simply don't work. One of those things is that the idea that you can love only one person at a time, which is utterly nonsense because every love is different. The idea that you have a problem in your relationship just because you have a crush of some sorts is silly and very dangerous for a relationship. It's just not how our brain works. One other thing is that you have a lot from being faithful and that the other is faithful. But do you? I would argue that you have way more security for your health in this instance if you have the rule that you have a condom whenever you have sex. Faithfulness is a bit like cutting your pinky finger and give it as a present to your significant other. It costs you a lot, but it brings them no objective gain, and the more you think about it, the more gross it becomes. This kind of police, of the competent police, are more or less invisible to most of you. They don't talk about it all too much, don't participate in communities, nor would they march for their rights. And the loud crowd also don't accept them. And they usually screw less around than the so-called monogamous people, which might have something to do with this forbidden fruit effect, because if you're allowed to have it, it's not that interesting anymore. And here comes the big but. But this is one of the things where I understand that the society benefits from something that sucks on the individual level. The idea of faithfulness arose in the Stone Ages in a guy that had one special thing that he got from his father that is very unique and is only there one time in the world or whatever, and he wanted to give it to his own blood. The only way to be sure that your son is to restrict the sexual behavior of your female or females. The idea of monogamy builds upon that, but accepts that if you have a society where some people have 100 women and others have none, you tend ending up with things that are bad for society. You end up with having practices like taharush and so on. The idea that every guy has one woman, officially at least, you distribute the sexual fulfillment and frustration more or less equally. This special kind of sexual frustration that then builds civilizations. On the other hand, if you are in a relationship where one wants to go in a theater and the other does not, you go with someone else. That's normal. And if you don't do that, well, you build up frustration that might kill the relationship in the long run. The thing is, there are not two sexual active people in the world who want the same amount of sex, the same kind of sex, always in the same time, in the same space. And since marriage has no monopoly on relationships anymore, we ended up with serial pseudo-monogamy, which evidently kills families. The idea of you have to be faithful, but if you want to screw someone else, well, you just can kill the relationship by writing a WhatsApp message. It's that kills relationships. Combined with the fact that monogamous relationships where both sides know exactly what's the last thing they could do before they commit a cheat are as rare as beatboxing unicorns. People think they know, but they don't, because they can't speak about it without the significant other say something in the like of, "What have you done?" I understand that a lot of people won't kill their relationship just because of a flirt, because that's a great cost and not a lot of gain there. And this commitment throws you in a place where the temptation is not very big anymore because of this forbidden fruit thingy. I think that a more honest angle to feelings and to the fact that we're simply not a monogamous species, because if we were a monogamous species, we wouldn't talk about this issue. If we would be just honest with that, I think we would end up with more working families, longer relationships, and happier people. But as I said in the beginning, it's not for everyone. The whole concept is challenging. But as in most of the things I analyze, I feel quite comfortable somewhere in the middle. I understand most of the sides for and against it, and I think I understand most of the motivations and philosophies behind it. And it's indeed a very interesting topic to think about it, and I think that most what is said on all sides tried indeed to solve the problem of serial monogamy that made the big mess. So what's your thoughts? Let me know. And if you're already down in the comment section, why not subscribe and share it with others on social media? Thanks for watching, guys, and have a wonderful time.